The war may be thousands of kilometers away, but its shockwaves are already hitting our wallets. Well, oil is flirting with $110. The rupee is racing towards a century, and forex reserves took a $31 billion hit. So is India's economy entering a danger zone, or do we have a Suraksha Kavach strong enough to weather the Hormuz storm? That's the question. Well, fuel price pain has of course continued. The second hike in less than a week. The first hike, which we have already seen as well, all of this after the Iran conflict. Tonight, we are going to cut through the political noise. We are going to decode the numbers that really matter. Why are global wars making your fuel, your food, and EMI bills more expensive? Why are gold and silver suddenly now shining brighter? Can diversification and self-reliance actually shield India from global chaos? And most importantly, how much worse can this get before this gets better? So let's explain not just what's happening, but why it matters to us. So let's get you the petrol and diesel prices in metro cities after a second fuel hike that we saw in a span of 5 days alone. You have this on your screen. When it comes to petrol prices, look at the figures, city-wise breakups that we have given. An increase by 0.87% in Delhi, which takes it to 98. Kolkata is much more steeper, 109 is the price that you'll have to shell out for petrol, which is plus 0.96 rupees. 107 at Mumbai, and in Chennai it stands at 104. This is where petrol prices are city-wise. Of course, when we look at diesel-wise, in Delhi, diesel stands at 91.58. In Kolkata, it stands at 96.07. Mumbai, it's around 94.08. And in Chennai, it is 96.11. As you can see, this is the increase that we are showing more or less everywhere. It's been an increase of 0.91 to 94% across these metros. So let's tell you the effect that it is happening on major elements such as rupee, on gold, on silver, crude oil that India has been importing. Let's explain. Rupee, and remember, the war had happened on the 28th of February. So we are going to compare now what it was before the war and tell you what it is now, which is after the over 71 days of war. Rupee, for example, when it stood in before the war at around 91.1 per dollar, but now on 19th of May, the rupee stands at 96.3 per dollar, inching close to that terrifying 100 mark. Let's now look at the next one, that is 24 karat gold. Where does it stand? Before the war, it was roughly 1,62,000 per 10 grams. Now, where does it stand after the war? You can see how it now stands at 1,58,000 per 10 grams. So you can see that there has been fluctuation when it comes to war. It had actually, the gold had gone up and then it has now come down as well. Let's tell you about silver. Silver before the war was around 2,450 per 10 grams, and now it stands at 2,931. You can see the spike here per 10 gram rate that we are showing for you, how it's increased after the war. The next commodity that we are going to be showing for you is that of the petrol. What was petrol before the war? After war, we have of course had two spikes in the last 1 week alone. The two hikes which have happened in installments. On 28th of February, which is before the war, petrol stood at 94.7 per litre, and now on 19th of May it stands at 98.6 rupees per litre. The next one is diesel. Diesel before the war stood at 87.6 per litre, and after the war, today, as of today, it stands at roughly 91.5. So you can see how all of that has now increased around 4.5 odd percentage. When it comes to Brent crude, before the war, it was 71.3 per barrel, and this is what's really shot up and why we've seen the spike after spike in the prices that has been coming, because now it stands from a 71.3 per barrel, it stands at 110 dollars per barrel. You can see how hike has been very, very steep when it comes specifically to crude oil. Now, on the other hand, you also have the rupee, which continues to free fall against the dollar. We were telling you about it. The impact of Iran war has been such on India and India's economy. In fact, last week itself, the currency had crossed 96 against the dollar for the first time. Now, the main reason is the rising oil prices. The rupee slide has been intensifying, and there are now more and more worries which are coming in about the outlook as well. Let's get you a comparison of where it was from March 2009, June 2013, and then over the next couple of years. Here you have it. In March 2009, the rupee was roughly at 50 per dollar, 50 rupees per dollar. Then you had by 2013, it was 60. It went up again in August 2018 to 70 per dollar. And then you have the Indian currency against the dollar in July 2022 stood at 80. Then you had in December 2025 went up to 90, and this is the worrying trend that we are seeing. At 96 is where it rests right now, inching dangerously close to a century, and this is the mark which really worries us, which is why you have calls also coming in from the Prime Minister, save Forex, because that's one of the most expensive commodities with the rising import bills that we have been shelling out because of the Iran war. Now, moving on, a day ahead of this hike, remember, Union Petroleum Minister Hardeep Singh Puri seemed to defend the price hike by oil marketing companies, saying that OMCs are the ones who are losing around 1,000 crore rupees per day. They are not moving out on essentially to the consumers. It is the OMCs who have taken that hit, and under recovery is even higher than that. In fact, the Union Petroleum Minister has allayed the concerns around fuel supply. The minister has said that despite two major wars in the last 4 years in the world, India has managed to avoid fuel shortage. He's also said that there's been no price hike in the last 4 years. In fact, prices have been reduced despite the war. This is what the Petroleum Minister has clarified. But why is Hardeep Singh Puri defending the centre, the OMCs? Let's explain. Let's explain with graphics now. Now, this is the comparison that you can see about the global fuel flare-up which we've seen since the US-Iran war. We are comparing India to what it is across the rest of the world. Now, this is where India stands. When it comes to petrol before the war and after the war, since then, there has been a hike of 4.2% in petrol, and in diesel, there has been a 4.4% increase in the price of diesel. But let's also compare it to the other nations, because remember, the Hormuz chokehold has been such that the war has impacted supply lines across the entire globe. In UAE, for example, petrol saw a hike of about 52%. Diesel saw a hike of 86%. Pakistan saw a hike of 54%. US saw a hike of 44%. Canada saw a hike of 31% in petrol. China too saw a hike of 21% in petrol. UK stands at 19%. Australia saw a spike of 18%. Italy saw a spike of 15%. Germany saw a spike of 13%. And India, when it comes to petrol, had a hike of 4.2%. This is why perhaps the government is saying that we haven't really fared that badly. Similarly, in diesel, you can see how the prices have been very steep percentage-wise in the inflation that they have seen. In UAE, it's as high at 86%. You can see the rest of them. Canada stands at 32%, China stands at 23%, UK at 34% hike in the diesel prices. Australia saw a 43% hike in the diesel prices. Italy had a 19% hike in diesel. So this gives you a sense of how India is faring as opposed to the rest of the world. India's figures there and the rest of the world here. Now, let's also give you some of the fuel-friendly states in India where the prices are relatively lower, because it's important. You have to factor in the state VAT as well, which is why state-wise there is a difference in the prices of fuel retail price. For example, when it comes to Punjab, and this is an interesting one, in Punjab where you have an Aam Aadmi Party Sarkar, you have the fuel price at 96.3%. This is one of the lowest that you have In Haryana, it is 94%. In Delhi, it's 94%. In Uttar Pradesh, it is 94%. These are the states with the lowest prices of fuel in India. But let's also take a look at which are the states which have the highest prices as well. We are going to show you that as well after this. The state-wise division, which tells you the states which have the highest petrol prices, and we are putting it in color coded as well, just to explain to you which government is in power, because we've seen a huge political slugfest over all of this as well. In Punjab, you have the Aam Aadmi Party. In Haryana, you have the BJP. Delhi, you have the BJP. Uttar Pradesh, you have the BJP. Gujarat, you have the BJP in power. And these are the states which have the lowest prices when it comes to fuel in India. There are others also. Let's get you a quick roundup of the others. I'm going to just read it to you. In Andhra Pradesh, fuel and the highest amount of petrol price is in Andhra Pradesh, 113. Now this of course is an NDA-led Sarkar. In Telangana, petrol stands at 110.9 rupees per litre. In Kerala, it is 107 rupees per litre. Madhya Pradesh, 106 rupees. Bihar, 105 rupees. These are the top 5 states where petrol is very, very expensive. The most expensive petrol that you can buy in India is in Andhra Pradesh. There are these state variations that I was telling you about. Now, viewers, remember, crude oil prices in the global energy market have also risen very, very sharply during the Russia-Ukraine war as well as in 2022. But the centre has assured that the burden is not being passed on to the consumers. That's the Suraksha Kavach that we are talking about. Now sample this. Just before the Russia-Ukraine war, the centre had slashed the excise duty on petrol by 5 rupees per litre and by 10 rupees on diesel. Which is why we are explaining to you now in the next graphical representation how the consumers have been relatively shielded by the centre as well. Because remember, before the Russia-Ukraine war, there was a cut in excise on petrol. It was cut by 5 rupees per litre, and similarly there was a cut on excise on diesel as well, and that was a very steep 10 rupees. The government had cut the prices at that time, and this was right ahead of the Russia-Ukraine war, that we the consumers were insulated, that the government points out very categorically. During the Russia-Ukraine war, this was in May 2022, you had a cut on excise on petrol by 8 rupees per litre, a similar cut which was on diesel, which was 5 rupees per litre. This was the second time that prices were cut while that war was still ongoing. Then on 14th of March 2024, this was another Suraksha Kavach which was extended when the prices of petrol were cut by 2 rupees per litre, diesel's prices were cut by 2 rupees per litre, which is why we saw a decline in the price, following which there have been fluctuations in the price. Now remember, during the West Asia conflict again, which threw the entire oil supply chains into a tizzy, on 27th of March 2026, there was a cut in the petrol prices, and that was cut by 10 rupees per litre. And diesel prices were also cut by 10 rupees per litre. So this was during the West Asia conflict itself in March 27 that you saw this drop in the prices, which is why it's important for us to point out that the first increase which has happened in the last 4 years, despite the fact that there have been several such cuts in the past, you have these kind of increases which have happened. The first increase, remember, happened in 4 years, which was on May 15th, just a few days back, which was petrol and diesel prices went up by 3 rupees, and then you had a subsequent rise. So what does it all mean? Let me go across to our panelists. Today, joining us on the show, we have Professor Deepanshu Mohan, who's joining us, economic affairs expert. Kishore Subramanian is also joining us, a financial expert. I'm going to come across to you first, Professor Mohan. At a time when we have numbers such as this, it does appear that the war is not going to be ending anytime soon. The question is it likely to get far worse before it gets better?
Yes, thank you for having me here, Meghna. So the short answer is yes, it would get worse before things get any better. There's a cycle in economic crisis terms, we say, which runs out, where there is a crisis. You would expect prices, of course, to rise, which would have an inflationary spiral. A lot of that is linked to petroleum products, of course, but also through fertilizers, food security concerns, and those of the liking of which, where the vulnerable sector of agricultural spaces is likely to be impacted. My concerns are always more on the primary commodities than petroleum linked itself, because India has diversified its suppliers on petroleum products enough. In fact, right now itself, there is a waiver that India has received, much like other countries, to buy Russian crude oil from the US, which is where a lot of the political issue was. And we would expect the sourcing to be diversified as well. Having said that, the impact of this on two particular accounts, the balance of payment effect of this has to be put into perspective. We're already seeing the value of the Indian rupee taking a hit. It's been doing so primarily before the West Asian crisis as well.
Absolutely.
But there is a double whammy here. I mean, you have capital flows in the light of foreign investment, which is going out. At the same time, you have import bills through oil and other areas going up. So it is a very difficult position for the Indian rupee. And my concern here is that if the rupee value is not better managed, I wouldn't use the word, you cannot have interventions from the RBI beyond what it is already doing. If it is not better managed, I think that can have a farther more worse cascading effect on inflation than on what we are seeing on oil alone.
Absolutely. In fact, many of the economic experts are even saying that there should be no more interventions by the RBI, and we should instead try and save our forex instead of trying to stabilize the rupees. If it's crossing 100, just let it be. Anyways, let me come across to Kishore Subramanian as well. Now, the government is saying that there have been two major wars, which we've seen in the last 4 years, but the world has avoided, across the world, but we've managed to avoid this fuel shortage despite all these wars. Are we better placed, better diversified now? Are we better de-risked than several of the other countries? Where do you think we are?
Good evening. First of all, as they call data to be the new gold, and you have shown enough new gold today to tell us whether India is better or not. It's almost evident from every single data point, from the rise in the fuel cost, from the slash during the peak of the Ukraine-Russia war, which is still going on, from the fact of the matter that our foreign exchange reserves have not depleted much, from the fact of the matter that inflation control has been one of the world's best, from the fact of the matter that RBI has maintained its repo rates and probably even headed southward until this Iran war happened, from the fact of the matter that India has been in isolation a growing economy. See, I'll tell you one thing. When any negative sentiment sets in, see, today we are crude dependent as far as fuel dependent in terms of import. We don't have anything here, so we have no choice but to import. And additionally, we also know that India consumes about 800 to 850 tons of gold every year, out of which about roughly 600, 650 tons goes into the marriage market. We know that these are inevitables culturally. If you suddenly, whether it is Prime Minister Modi ji or you, me, whoever shouting on the rooftop or telling any amount, it doesn't matter. If tomorrow your daughter or son is going to get married, you're going to put gold. You're not going to say, oh my God, the country is in economic crisis. It doesn't happen. It doesn't work like that. Point number one. Point number two. Having understood that there is going to be a massive pressure on gold imports and we are dependent on crude import, understand under these trying circumstances, we are still the only economy in the world growing at north of 6.5%. These are blips. Have we not seen crisis? We have seen balance of payment crisis in 91. We have seen dot-com crisis. We have seen the financial crisis in 2008. Please, let me tell you a small story. Otherwise, in a long format, I would not have told this, but a quick small story.
Okay.
There was a cricket match when Jeff Boycott was playing and Michael Holding was bowling. And for the paucity of time, I'll speeden it up. He was beaten on the first ball, second ball, and continuously happened for 5 balls. On the 6th ball, Jeff Boycott got out. So when he came into the pavilion, his teammate said, Boyke, you were dancing on the pitch. He just used an abusive word true to Jeff Boycott and said, had I not been there, you would have been 0 for 6. So remember one thing, that if BJP was not there today, India
Okay.
would have this condition. We were handed over. I'm not talking this from a political point of view, from a very nationalistic, citizen-centric
Right.
point of view.
Okay.
Handed over a country which was at fragile 5 with a foreign exchange of $380 billion. Today we are at
Okay.
700. And please look at percentages. Let's not even talk about absolute number. When
It doesn't
BJP
look like Professor Deepanshu Mohan agrees with you, but unfortunately, gentlemen, we are completely run out of time. But let's look at the silver lining. Yes, there is a problem, and this is a spiraling problem across the globe. But in the midst of it all, there is also scope. The silver lining that we are talking about of Atmanirbharta, of self-reliance, of diversification, of lessons which have been learned, hopefully, this is going to be a lesson that we've learned for the future as well. We're out of time, but thank you so much. I appreciate it. Professor Deepanshu Mohan as well as Kishore Subramanian for putting all of this into perspective. Hopefully now you know what exactly is the health of the economy. With that, we wrap up. Thank you for watching.